Thank you all so much for listening to me. This means so much to be able to do this. So I actually would love to share some new work. If you all think that that would be cool. I just wrote a series of haiku. So are you all familiar with haiku? Haiku is some of my favorite forms of poetry to do. And they're super short poems. They only have 3 lines, 5 syllables for the first line, 7 for the second, and 5 for the third. And so if we were in person, I would do a call and response where I say 575 and you say 575, and then I'd give you the poem. But since we're not going to do that, I just imagine you all's energy, and I imagine you all giving me the energy that I need to perform haiku. And so these are a series of haiku that I wrote on the summer of COVID-19. How is art not essential when it is the first thing we reach for? My mom lives 40 minutes away. It will take a year to get there. I am a voyeur to my own city. I know better than to touch. Kindness is the type of currency that survives a market crashing. It feels like a sort of betrayal, creating while the world is on fire. Tell me the name of who you will run to first when this is all over. I watched the earth take a deep breath today. It did not cough after. I have learned so much about how to touch people when I cannot hold them. And so that is my series of haiku on the summer of COVID-19. I hope you enjoyed those. I am going to read some work out of my book. So I published Smoke April 20th of this year. It is my baby. It's my sophomore manuscript. It is the manuscript that broke me and put me back together again. And Smoke is about a heartbreak. It uses the metaphor of a house fire to talk about love and the ways that we have to often reclaim ourselves when we lose love and how to find it again. And so there's some fun work in this book. And one of the poems that I love to perform most is this poem about the women. I went through a really tough time in 2018. I had a really rough breakup. An organization that I sat on the board for dissolved, and it was rough. And so it was always been women and femmes and folks of color and queer folk who show up and do the work, whether that's being a shoulder to lean on, whether that's seeking justice on your behalf. And so I wrote this for the women in my community who show up all the time, and it is called Warriors. When the revolution comes, send me women who smoke and drink gin and cuss. Send me women who sit with their legs open, messy-haired women who cock pistol for sport. Send me women in comfortable shoes, women who change tires and check oil, then tell the tow truck man to keep it moving because he took too long. And ain't it just like a man to take too long? Send me women who roll backwards and know all the verses to the International Players Anthem. Send me the village of the unladylike and watch us save your sorry asses. And so that's Warriors. I hope you all enjoyed that piece. Thank you all so much for your energy. I see the chat. That is super dope.
My first act of rebellion happened at 7 years old. I ran away from home, my Barbie suitcase packed with nothing but books. My mother never even tried to stop me. She sobs into her laughter when she retells the tale. I guess hurt people love a good story. One of the first slave rebellions happened in the early 18th century. Nat Turner led an uprising that would see over 50 white slave owners dead. Armed with nothing but biblical prophecy and batons, he read of a freedom that could only come by force. He told it again and again. I guess hurt people love a good story. The library is where little Black girls go to find peace when the war is raging within us. when we know too well what happens to Black girls who speak as loudly as their mothers do, falling face first into imagery that looks nothing like our destiny, that tells us we are gifted and special, then says no, not really. Anne of Green Gables, Wizard of Oz, Shakespeare, all the worlds in which Black people suddenly disappear. It was illegal to teach slaves to read or write. Literacy was a threat to the institution of slavery. You want to hide something from niggas, put it in a book. We all know they don't read. 3 Black boys enter the library on a Sunday in search of books from the literary canon. I show them the Black author section, give them James Baldwin, Frantz Fanon, Zora Neale Hurston, call it Reparations. I sit behind the counter now. White female aggression is now nothing more than a nuisance that sits beside me asking me for help. Call it Reparations. The current Librarian of Congress, Carla Hayden, is a Black woman whose tenure will outlast Trump's presidency. Call it Reparations. I taught my beautiful Black son how to read on his own. Call it Reparations. He cries when he does not know the words, thinks that there is something wrong with him, but isn't that Black privilege? To hold a book in your hand and struggle with a language that has more names for you than you have for yourself? And haven't we read this story before? The one that wouldn't fit on the shelf the way we want it to, so we turn it on its side, weakening the spine, bending under the weight of institutional racism until eventually it is unable to stand on its own, and then a little Black girl writes a poem about it, chooses a career in public libraries, uses the same government institution from which she was once banished to welcome little Black children with open arms, turning belly of the beast into birthing room, into sanctuary, into asylum. Call it reparations.
Content warning for divorce or strained relationships with parents. Before my parents' wedding photos faced the wall at the back of what is now my mother's unshared closet, she is in the kitchen cutting bagels in half using a bagel slicer. It is better to cut the bagels before you freeze them, she reminds me, and you need to freeze them so that they stay fresh longer. With this batch of bagels, the bagel slicer is creating one half too thick and the other too thin, rather than two equal infinite loops. My mother, sure disappointment is ahead, still uses the bagel slicer to cut a fourth bagel. Perhaps it is her way of resisting calling a center that still has light shining through it a black hole, or perhaps when the thinner half breaks at its smallest point again, she considers it a victor rather than broken because of its refusal to bear its whole. But still, when I say, maybe stop cutting them with the slicer, my mother looks at me like I am novel and pulls out a toothed knife. The rest of the bagels take longer to split, but my mother is pleased by their symmetry. A few years before the bagel incident, I give my father a mug I got for him while in Athens on a school trip. He uses the mug a few times that week before he notices that the dishwasher is causing the print to start to fade. He is frowning at the mug when I tell him maybe it's more of a hand-washed kind of mug. He shrugs under the weight of being the recipient of a gift that requires his effort to preserve. He keeps using the mug, but also keeps putting it in the dishwasher, and after a few dozen times, the print is nearly invisible. The mug gets in line and spends the next few weeks scooching its way to the back of the cupboard, a relatively comfortable place because if you have to be naked in public, you can do so more inconspicuously with your back against the wall. Some reconfigurations later, my mother is packing my father's things. I know she keeps the bagel slicer that was originally a Christmas present to my father, but I am not sure if the mug is packed in one of my father's boxes, and I do not check the back of the cupboard. It hurts less to consider the mug Schrodingered rather than dead, but part of a life I acknowledge we existed in and part of a life my parents want to forget. My parents might question who this poem villainizes, but a previous version of myself only had the armor of preparing to write this story, and it was then that I decided stubbornly that there would be no villains and that the only confirmed victims are the mug and the first third of a dozen bagels. And while in my father's narrative he is bagel whose brokenness is hidden under cream cheese spread by his slicer's knife, and while in my mother's tale she is not just blank mug, she is chipped rim being bled on by the lips of her user, this poem is mine, and I am bagel nor mug, I am only their most attuned observer.
Every year, I leave friends behind. My Spotify wrapped playlists are the soundtracks to my goodbyes, and those I have left or lost are alive again in the pauses before one song turns into another. Airports, our graveyards, our tombstones, and buying a plane ticket feels like being buried alive. I've learned leaving slowly is still leaving, circular as it may be, and I am left wondering, where is the rest of me? The stitches dissolve, and I make my dead dance for points, write epitaphs in 4/4 timing. How many unmarked graves make up a perfect 30? A headline, a flight, break my heart for $20, bus fare, groceries, puppet paper skeletons, and suddenly I can afford to eat. I don't know if it's them or me. If they are a part of me but exist apart from me, can I still create something beautiful if it's not coming from a place of pain? Is it blood on my hands or just jet fuel? Zombie by the Cranberries plays, and I'm living reminder of what tore one family into pieces, another into memories but off the map. And suddenly, my arms are too small to hold the lonely dead who breathe in my reflection. I adapt, but I don't. I heal, but I hurt. Tell me what the cost of leaving is. I don't want to lose your love tonight. You are here in my arms again. It's been a long time running. Then everything goes quiet, and I am home for a rest, assured. I never got on that plane willingly. Hallelujah. My family is whole and happy, and we are together at the same table listening to the playlist you gave me. A fragmented type of love is what I know. The best thing about our goodbye was the thought of seeing you again. I turn on the radio and we are in the same city. You talking to me from 486 miles away. I YouTube your poems when I miss you. Every chapbook I have ever collected stays in my carry-on. Ahead by a century, and I don't know how to love without fear. Is not what we deserve, to be loved gently in strong fists. Can't always fish out the flashbacks, are brighter than the street lights, have all started to look the same. So, if you find yourself as lost as I am, look for the words I wrote when I was happy. Hold the pieces of my soul I've left in poems across the country. Remember feeling seen in the moments you were most yourself. That's how you know when you finally found home.